right, welcome everybody to the MSP Success Podcast. I'm Allison Foelber, Editor-in-Chief of MSP Success Magazine, and I'm joined by
Robb, Patterson, an MSP coach, and I'm host of one of the MSP Success Podcast shows, My First Million. And we're excited to kick off the podcast for all of you MSPs out there.
I know, episode 0 today. So, Robb, what is this podcast really about? Like, what can our listeners expect?
I mean, they can expect a thrill ride from start to finish. We're interviewing different MSPs primarily who have either taken their business to their first $1 million in revenue or have reached their first $1 million in profit, in net profit, in EBITDA. And we're gonna, go over the strategies and tactics and things that they've done to get there.
That sounds great. I know we've got a lot of other podcast kind of episodes lined out there too. We're talking about AI. We're talking about leadership. So a lot of different things that have to do with building your business, like from the trenches. So, I mean, what are some of the types of strategies that we're going to be talking about? Is this deep into tech or is it more about business?
No, it's very much more about business. I mean, we've covered in some of the episodes we've recorded already. We've covered things like what are some key items you need to know from your financial side of the business. What are things you need to understand when you're hiring? How do you build company culture? How do you scale your business? I mean, we kind of run the gamut. Here and there, we'll touch on a hot trend, like AI is obviously a hot trend, or things that people are finding traction with. But mostly, it's about the business and how to build a successful business that you can scale. Okay,
and I know I listened to a couple of the early ones too. One of the things that I found was every episode there's like actionable things that you can take from it. It's not just this kind of, fluff interview. Like there are strategies and tactics that whether it's an MSP or one of our experts, like gives you as an MSP owner in order to grow. Like, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's completely by design. We like to give you a little bit of the flavor of sort of the origin story of these companies, but then we want to dive into, really what did they do to get to this point? What did they learn? What mistakes did they make? What things would they do differently to really try to get you focused on accelerating your path to success? And also we try to double click into marketing strategies and really specific tactics that they found successful.
Okay, so on My First Million, your podcast series, these are MSPs, right? These are the ones who are in the trenches, right? So tell me a little bit about kind of some of the types of guests that you're having on.
Yeah, so far we've really taken from the pool of MSPs that we know have had some really great success, not just in hitting the number, but in the way that they built their businesses and the way that they look at building the marketing funnel and really overcoming some of those struggles of like, who do you hire first in these roles, or how do you build your business in a way that you can continue to scale? Because when we first were thinking about even what to name this podcast or how to think about the description of it, we really were thinking like, it's one thing to get to a certain level, but really the MSPs, in our community, they're thinking a lot about how do you scale after you get somewhere. And that's a whole other challenge. Like to get it off the ground is one thing, but really to build it in a way that you can scale it and bring in second level managers and continue to grow we're trying to hit that kind of spectrum in here.
Yeah. So really everything that, an MSP would need to grow, kind of a, MSP in a box, everything that you need to know. So, starting out with, of course, the marketing, but then, leadership, what should your tech stack look like, new tech to add to it. I know some of the other, series we're coming out with on the MSP Success Podcast, we're diving deep into AI. We've got an episode lined up, with an attorney about, how do you build your contracts? And so all these questions that you have as an entrepreneur, a lot of us coming from being, in-house IT to now wanting to start your own business, like how the hell do you even start an MSP? And so we want to be a resource, right, for those MSPs, and not just you and I, but bringing on experts and bringing on, other MSPs who've been in the mud and made it out on the other side, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the perspective I try to help add to that is I was director of sales and marketing for an MSP for a decade. And before that, I had an MSP, and so I've kind of been through some of that path of, being a tech and, having a bunch of customers and not having enough time and literally trying to figure out how to build a sales and marketing department. So I think a lot of the dialogue is fresh, because it's not just here, let me ask you some question that I don't really understand the context to, and you shoot out an answer and I go, great, next question. I mean, we can get into some nuance there. And I think so far the guests have really opened up and brought their experience to the table. A
lot of great stories too. I think that the listener, you're going to hear your story and their story, and I think that's where the power really comes, is when you hear their struggles and you're like, I'm there too, and this is how they made it out the other side, and this is how they increase their profits or their revenue, which ultimately leads into less stress, a happier life, a better lifestyle. And so that's what we're here to do, right?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I typically ask the question in there too about work-life balance. I think you'll find over the different episodes and the different people we're talking to, there's very different takes on that whole story. Like what is success in that regard of, for some people it's not really reduced stress. It's almost more like they get to focus more of that kind of stress energy in a different department, or different ways they kind of juggle the family life. So there's a lot in there, because these are just other humans who are sharing their story and really trying to just do this to help give you an accelerated path to get somewhere.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to add too is I feel like it's a lot, like there's not a lot of fluff. Like it's just very practical advice. And so we don't have a lot of time to sit and listen to podcasts or, watch webinars or do trainings. Like, these are podcasts that are straight to the point, very practical, no fluff. You can listen to, you're going to get actionable, things that you can take right away, to improve your MSP.
Yeah. I mean, and that's by design too. I mean, I'm a talker, so I try to keep things pretty tight and just launch right in, just to the origin story and move from there to key areas. And I mean, I think the conversations have been going really well. I think there's a lot of value in there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's free. Obviously, it's a podcast. So if you're at all interested in anything that Rob and I talked about today that we're covering in the MSP Success Podcast, please hit subscribe. You'll be able to listen to those episodes as soon as they come out, whether it's My First Million or a focus on AI or leadership or tech. We're going to have all sorts of different kinds of podcasts for you, the MSP business owner. So hit subscribe, and we can't wait to see you on episode 1.
Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of the MSP Success Podcast. If you found this valuable, please subscribe and leave a comment. You can also subscribe to our free MSP Success magazine and get more IT business resources at mspsuccess.com.